Welcome to another installment of Sayuga Solutions presents tools for Google Apps Script Google Suite. Now, today what I intend to show is a simple exercise on creating your own little mail merge that you can use with Google Sheets to take information from an existing Google Sheet, merge it into a template document by finding specific tags, and then taking that and saving that template document into a folder that you've pre-designated. Now, you'll see here I have a repository folder of the sheet and my template. Now, the repository folder itself is currently empty. Take note though of this number ID that is present on the top. That ID will be important for the future. There is your spreadsheet, and then there's your template. Have them here open. You'll see, for example, here on the spreadsheet, what we have is primarily a existing list of just basic data. Now, this existing list of basic data is what we're going to first be working on. Now, first of all, the important part of a mail merge is being able to capture the data. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Script Editor. What I did was go to Tools, Script Editor, if you don't know that yet. Now, you notice I already have some preset code. That's just to make things a little bit quicker. Now, this here is just to add a menu. I have this present in another video, which I will be having attached to the comments of this video so that you can look at it if you don't know how to add a menu. This is just simply to make things easier to run. Now, the first function that you care for is this one right over here. Now, what this is doing is it's using the spreadsheet app get active spreadsheet call that allows us to take the existing active spreadsheet, which in this case would be the spreadsheet that is open at that time. And you'll see here I am calling the active sheet for that spreadsheet, so that way whenever I call this function, it works on whatever sheet I happen to be looking at that time. Now, these here are important. Last row allows you to essentially capture the last known row within the sheet that it recognizes as having data. If we go back to the sheet, you'll notice that the last row is row 11. There's also an existing one for last column, which identifies that column. The reason that is important is for us to pull the data itself. What you will be doing is you're going to be using the get range function. And what you do is you designate the first row and the first column it's looking at, which in this case would be at the first cell that's on the first row, first column, so from that one. And you'll remember we looked at the last row, last column. It'll know that it has to grab from here all the way to the last row, row 11, last column. So it'll be equivalent to me selecting from A to D11. So it's that same format, but you're just telling it via numeric designation. Now you're going to do sheet, which in this case we're calling the active sheet. Given it the range that's being looked at, it's automatically realizing how many rows and how many columns are being used, so that way you don't have to tell it exactly how many columns to take. And then you're going to get the values. Now, this get values, what it does is it pulls an array list, which is going to be saved into data range, which has each of these rows saved as its own array entry. Now, let me show you. As you see here, I already have the menu up and running. We're going to show the data. Now, you see this here. All of this data that you're seeing here is the same data that is present in this location. You'll notice column A, B, C, D. And then you have A1, B1, C1, D1. You'll notice that the pattern is it's showing all the data in that specific order. That's because Though it's not that apparent here, each of these is being treated as one entry in the list. Now I'm going to show you over through the logger. So if you go to View, Logs, you'll see these here. This is the date that it ran. So you'll see now here you have one entry, two entries, three entries, each of these designated to a specific row. Now, for those that may be wondering how I got that screen to appear, as well as that log window, you'll notice I have these two sections here. Now, the logger log allows you to show a particular reply under the logs section. This is particularly good when you want to double check when information is being pulled at a specific point. So in this case, for example, I'm looking so that the logger log will display the data range that I'm looking at this stage. But so that I could show you also on the spreadsheet when I click the button, I added a UI alert. The Spreadsheet app Get UI allows you to get access to certain modals, such as prompts, alerts, and such. I'll follow up on that on a different video because that goes into a lot more detail. But the UI alert allows me to create that alert window that you saw earlier. That allows me to have it show information and give me an OK button so that it recognizes that I'm done with the window. Now, we've seen how to pull the data. Let's see how to merge the data. For that, we're going to use this little data over here. We'll see you have your lists with your name, your date, your time. Let's say you had a list that had 100 names with 100 dates and 100 times. And you had to create a letter that makes use of that information. Here we have my template letter. But you don't want to have to go and manually populate all this information. Well, in this case, what we've done is we've created one single template document. It is a Google Docs, and we called it to, and you'll notice these bracketed tag names, name, please make sure to attend meeting on date, bracketed, time, bracketed. Now, the reason these appear bracketed is very simple. First, note that these correspond to the same names as they appear on the top of the columns. Now that means that I am using these names on the top of the columns as the identifiers, the tags, so to speak, for what will go where when I am merging the information from the spreadsheet into the template. Now, once again, looking over here, we have two, and we're going to be wanting for the name to be updated, the date to be updated, and the time to be updated. Now, let's go back to the code. Now let's do something a little bit different. We're going to do the following. Now we are going to create a new function, and this new function is going to do the mail merge itself. Oh, sorry, went too far. So this is my new function. Now, so as to not waste time, I'm going to actually reuse the original function I pulled the data with. So by simply adding a return data range to the end of the function I created originally, so function 1, I am now able to call this function, get the data, and actually use that function whenever it's called to give that data to another item. So now in this function over here, you'll see I have the data range being pulled by simply calling upon that function. So here I'm pulling this data. So I'm having the new function call the old function, grab that data. Now you'll notice here this doc ID, this long number. This number corresponds to the same ID present on the search bar when you're looking at the document template. So you're going to want to have that specific information. Now, along with that information, you're going to want to have a folder. This is something I particularly prefer to do. Designated folder, where you're going to be wanting all the letters you're going to create to be saved. In this case, I created a folder called repository, and if you open it up, you'll see once again over here, same as before, that's the ID for the folder, and that's what I'm saving here. Now allow me to explain what I am doing. This is a lot simpler than it looks. I am taking the existing data, and I am taking the template ID, I am taking the destination ID. Now, the destination ID is used only so that I can identify the folder I'm going to be saving everything. So we're just going to go right ahead and use the destination folder placeholder, and we're going to call drive app get folder by ID destination ID. This means that now through this I can automatically call to that folder. Now what I'm going to do as well is, you'll see here that I have a for loop that essentially runs according to how many entries are present within my data range. Now this is because I want it to run according to the number of people that I have on my list. That's why I said you could have 100, you could have 200 people. So you want to make sure that this will run according to however many people are present on the data. But you don't want to grab the header, so we make sure that var I equals 1 instead of 0, and do the data length. And in this case, I'm going to call the name of the header, just of the letter, pardon me, just letter, and give it the number of the letter, which in this case would be the number of the row that is being used, and that's going to be the name of the file. So I use drive app to get the file by ID. So this doc ID is the template that I'm going to be making a copy of. I'm going to give it a new name. The new name is going to be what we designate here, and the destination folder which we got on this location. This creates here a new copy of our template exactly as it exists into the folder repository that we created. Now we want to get the new ID for the letter that we just created, so we do new letter, get ID. Now, what we first want to do when dealing with a document is we need to open the document, because that's what allows us to actually manipulate whatever is present within an existing document. So what we're going to do is we're going to do new doc, which would be the new letter we just created, and we're going to take document app open by ID, new doc ID. That lets me grab this ID I just identified when I made the copy, and I'm going to open that document. When I open it, I'm going to get the body, because what it's going to be updating will be in the body of the document, as compared to the header or footer. The body would be what's present in the middle of the document, so to speak. So you'll see here I have current data. This is just because I find it easier to deal with this way. This being because if you'll remember from the logs, you'll see that there is 2 icons present. This means that this here is not necessarily a first location of the array. This is not a one-dimensional array, it's a 2-dimensional array. That means that if I want to call anything within this set of items, I have to call the data range 0, which means row 0 in this case, and I would say would need row 0, entry 0, row 0, entry 1, row 0, entry 2, row 0, entry 3. In this case, say for example, if I want to do this, it would be row 3, entry 0, row 3, entry 1, row 3, entry 2, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm using current data just to make things a little bit easier for me, and I'm taking the data range, or in this case the row I'm going to be working on. So remember, I have a for loop that's counting how many rows is going to run for every single person existing on my list. I then take that I figure out the row I'm working on, and I run it for that row for every single item that exists within that row. Now, I'm going to need a tag to identify. In this case, I'm going to take data range 0 because we know that the first row of data present in data range is the header. That is how I'm taking these names that are going to be used as the tags to identify in the document. Now, I don't want to just leave that as name because if I use name, then I would accidentally change everything. So I added those brackets on the outside of name. Now you'll see here I have var tag equals open bracket, data range, close bracket. That creates the tag that's going to be identified. And then I run it so that as long as that tag is existing anywhere within the data, in other words, it is not null, it'll replace that tag with the data itself that corresponds to that spot in the data range. So in other words, if we're looking at data range on this line, this would be, if you're looking at the tag name, you want to make sure to grab SpongeBob. You look at a tag date, you're going to make sure to grab the correct dates, the correct time. This allows you to identify the tag and the correct data entry. Once that's all been built, you save and close the document so that way the changes you made are saved. Now remember, this is being done with a for loop for each and every single entry present within your list. Now, we actually don't need that there. You'll notice I have these here commented out. I'll explain those in a moment. So what I'm going to do is we are going to return back to this list. You notice we have sheet 2 selected, name, date, time, and your entries. So we're going to go to Yugasol and we're going to run the mail merge. All right. So the mail merge is now running. We checked the data that was being used. Script finished. Now if we go to the repository, you'll see 3 letters have now appeared. And if we open letter 1, you'll see to SpongeBob. Oh, but what's this? Now this is something I wish to point out. This I've done on purpose. You'll notice that this here has the full date time spectrum of the entry that I have here. Now this is because Google Apps Script recognized that this is a date and a time, and when it grabs it, it sees it in this format. It doesn't just see the date, it doesn't just see the time, it sees all this information when it grabs it. This is not what we want. So let's get rid of this because we can't use this, and let's go ahead and do a little bit of error handling. So in this case, what we want to do is do a little change. Now we want to make sure that whenever we're doing an entry that's going to be replacing the tag that we're going to be using, it's in the correct format. Now I know date and time is going to be my issue, so I created a separate function called date time corrector, and I'm giving it X because I want to know which item of the current data I'm looking at, and I want to see the actual current data entry that I'm going to be looking at. Now you'll see this little thing here is just a simple if else if run. Now what it does is it checks if I'm looking at what is present in the position 1 on position 2 of the data array, which in this case, now remembering that a data array starts from 0, if it's on 0 or anywhere else, it does nothing. It just returns the entry as it exists. But if it is on 1 or 2, it'll adjust it. So in the case of it being located in 1, what it does is it finds in data entry 1, the utilities format date, which allows me to take the date entry as it sees it and format it to appear only at the month, day, year format. But if it's on data entry slot 2 of the array, it'll return it, formatting it as an hour, minute, AM, PM format. That allows me to then run it, take the data and the tag, check that the tag is, check that the entry is in the correct format, and then it just plain and simply attaches it to the mail merge accordingly. Let's run it. So you'll see the data is the correct data. You do OK. Boom, boom, boom. Script has finished. Let's look at our letters. Letter 1 now has your name, your correct date, your correct time. Let's look at letter 2. Correct name, correct date, correct time. And we can double check it against the lists. That is correct. Now that's a simple mail merge. As much as it might look complicated, all it took is just a little bit of code on the back, and you could run this easily with 100, 200, 500 names and create letters. And I can add whatever I wish to add to the template and just regenerate all the letters accordingly. This is particularly effective for a way in which, say for example, you want to create even something as simple as thank you letters specifically sending to somebody, or if you're sending something to a number of customers that you wish to make sure have the proper names and addresses and such listed. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email at jvargas.sayuga@gmail.com. I'll do my best to assist, or just leave a comment below and I will gladly get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.